Charles Adams is the host of the primetime debate television programme called Fox Face Off on Fox Soul, and he's a legal analyst for Houston's Fox 26. He joins us now. Charles Adams, thank you very much for joining us tonight on LBC.
Thank you so much for having me, Ms. Johnson.
You're most welcome. What's your answer to my question? Is this proportionate or is this fascistic?
I don't think anyone expects Donald Trump to be proportionate in his rhetoric or response to many things. And clearly on immigration, he was left a debacle by the Biden administration, where we had kind of a coalescing of both the media and the Democrats of pretending it wasn't a problem until the American public was so fed up that then we had a completely dishonest pander about how it's the Republicans that have been obstructing this. I say this as until about 7-8 years ago, lifelong Democrat. My tenure on talk radio here was the contrarian voice on conservative talk radio. But we have the illiberal liberalism of the day, both in my country and your country. And I love the United Kingdom. My son graduated from the London School of Economics. I've made many trips there. Just the city of London is frankly my favorite city in the world, but it does seem like the left side of the dial or the spectrum has decided that the concerns of the working class are incredibly secondary. And so we have Trump, who is clearly just a oligarchical corporatist. He's not a fascist. He's not a Nazi. And when we bandy those terms, I think we ignore history. And we really just, it's not an appropriate criticism that leads to turning this wheel of, oh, well, call me a fascist, I don't care, because that term has become meaningless. But what he is someone who has taken a populist narrative, because the Democrats, our liberals, have just ignored the concerns of the working class. And when it pertains to immigration, it is, let's stop putting other people than our citizens first. Let's stop pushing them to the back of the line. Your prime minister just lectured everyone on the need to contribute more. It's not a contribution when you're taking it, right? To carry the incredible economic burden your country is facing. And a lot of it is downstream from both channel migration and legal migration. And then we have to look at the issue of the Islamification of Europe, of the UK, and in a much smaller degree, America, and the incredible amount, if you look at theocratic violence in the world today, right, globally, it is almost exclusively what we used to call radical Islamist terror. But when you look at the numbers, especially in Muslim nation states, the overwhelming support, right, for this kind of action, well, there needs to be some sort of response. Do I think Trump's proportionate? Absolutely not. But there needs to be some sort of response. And I don't think he chose to do this on Thanksgiving. I think the terrorists that shot two innocent people who had just been sworn in doing their civic duty, I think that was what led to this conversation with the nation.
How's it gone down in the United States?
I'm sorry?
How has his announcement gone down in the United States?
So I'm not a Trumper, right? I've never been on Team Trump. I am not on Team Biden at all either. But what we have mostly is I think we've got to the point where we assume the conversations, I still call it Twitter, but I guess it's X now, and social media are really the conversations in America, and they're not. It's just the loudest, angriest voices are platformed by social media. I myself have had to tell my entire family to go upstairs and be quiet to do this show because my house is filled with my family, and my poor dogs got banished to the third floor because they're yippy and loud. It is a holiday. It is Thanksgiving, right? I spent the day with family yesterday. I'm spending the day with family today. That's why I didn't put on a suit for you, and I apologize for that. But it is, I think working regular Americans, I don't think we allow this to inform our daily actions or our lives. It's just the people that shriek about politics. And I do that on TV all the time, so I'm as much to blame.
I'm happy Thanksgiving, I should have said, but
Yep.
has I know that the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal are still published today. It's Black Friday. I don't think that they paused publication. And I just wondered, in the opinion-forming elite, how have they reflected Trump's announcement that he is going to pause all immigration from third world countries? And he hit, and in his sort of his outburst against the refugee burden and the immigrant burden on the country.
I mean, look, the New York Times is always going to take Trump as a demon position, right? And uniformly, you see on what we consider mainstream, which is very left-leaning platforms, not just print media, but on all types of platforms,
they've decried it.
This is horrible.
Yeah. Okay.
And personally, me. Right? I mean, let's not forget that we have women and children trying to flee the horrifying oppression that they experience throughout, 80% of the Islamist world, right? And we shouldn't dehumanize them. But we need, obviously, to vet people more. What we see here and what you've seen, like in Birmingham and other parts of your beautiful country, is a massive amount of migration, but a very small amount of integration, and a whole number of people that have come to the Western world and said, we want to impose what we fled on the country that accepted us, embraced us, and provided us with an overwhelming amount of financial support. And we've seen a lot of terror. And we have a lot of like the New York Times and the media in the UK that kind of like to pretend that that's not occurring. And it is. So we need this middle ground. Like, we need to vet people more. And more importantly, we need to remove people, right? You hear horror story after horror story of people committing a sexual assault and then not being deported because they may suffer back in the country they've been from. And that's absurd. If you come to the Western world, if you're embraced and you choose to commit a horrifying crime, you should be forced to leave. The concept that we have in a lot of blue states here, sanctuary cities, right, where the city or the state will not communicate with the federal government about the criminality of individuals that are here as residents or illegal entrants or whatever their status is, because they don't want them deported. But if
why
you come
don't
to
they
the country,
why don't they want their illegals, their criminals deported?
Well, I don't know. I mean, the liberals have embraced here this thought that it's somehow, no one's illegal on stolen land. And I think we should have a special relationship with Mexico. It should be much easier for Mexican nationals to come to this country and leave this country than it is. And same with Central and South America. But we have to do better about saying the West as a whole has to do better, both the EU, the UK, and the United States, of saying, hey, if you come here and you don't want to be part of this grand experiment, right? You don't want to be part of the freedoms that were defined by France and have spread across the world over the last few hundred years, then, you don't get to stay.
But that's not how it works, as you know, Charles.
Right.
That they leave or they flee or they migrate from the Islamic countries, and they want to impose exactly the regime they've escaped on right. their host country. I mean, in theory, not everyone. Only the radical Islam does. Most of the Muslim immigrants don't, and assimilate. Not all of them do. I agree. Assimilation is a problem. Acculturation is a problem. The way multiculturalism has clearly failed is also a problem. Trump is daring to say it. And we have not yet reached that point here. It's a kind of reform narrative, but it's not a Labour narrative, certainly. Can he actually do it, though? I mean, pausing all migration, it's just what happens when people arrive at the airport?
Well, I mean, it's not pausing people visiting our wonderful country, right? It is pausing people immigrating. You saw these stark numbers at the border where we had the entry and the claims for asylum and all these things, and they're so far down. But of course, they had gotten out of control under Biden, and it wasn't an open floodgate.
So this is about people who are moving to try to live and gain residency and U.S. nationality. It's not about people coming on holiday like it was before in the first term, if you remember.
Yeah, no, it was for for parts of the world, right? For parts of the world where there are legitimate concerns. But here's the problem. When we say, hey, we're not going to be America anymore, right? We're not going to embrace the poor huddled masses, then we're kind of giving up something. But what we really need to do, we forget that, 100, 150 years ago, they very much vetted people and examined people. And that we need to go back to doing that, especially, sadly, from people seeking to migrate from the Islamist world, where there is, so we call it extremism, but it's incredibly normalized in some of those countries, right? Afghanistan being one of them. But we can't forget that there are, the women, if you look or if you read, if you examine, I'm sure you have, the plight of women today in Afghanistan, after we spent billions in regime change warmongering, which I'm holistically against, especially in the Islamic world, we did nothing but make things worse, right? And how do we say no to those women and children? How do we say no to women?
I wish we could take them, but I'm not that keen on taking the Afghan male population. Of course, if they worked with our armed forces, as yours and ours, fair enough, and they're at risk from the Taliban regime, but it's women and children who are at risk from the Taliban regime, not the men of Afghanistan. And I'm afraid, Charles Adams, we have to leave it there. But thank you so much for your time this holiday.